my guest is Senator Kim Thatcher, and there are some successes that they had even as a super minority this session. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, Veronica. Yeah, there's always some silver lining somewhere, right? Yeah.
Well, I had a guest last week that talked about the vaccine bill that got stopped. Thank God. So.
Yeah, people wonder about that, and it just kind of came down to people's medical freedom. That's what was issue. So far that one's dead, and same with the I call it the gun bill. I mean,
yeah, that's what I've been hearing.
It was 978. Yeah, it's dead for now. I'm sure they'll be coming forward in future sessions, but.
So overview, what's the overview of the session? What, did you feel good about it, or was it indifferent?
This was a very different session. I saw more what I call bad bills flying through here than ever before.
Ooh.
More bad bills that really seriously got legs and moved through. Obviously there were some good things, but there were some, and still are, we're not done with session yet, still are some things in play that I think could really, really hurt. Yeah.
Oh boy, okay. What should we talk about? How about the victory of the forced vaccination and the guns? We just kind of mentioned brief that.
Well, yeah.
There was a strong grassroots effort, I understand.
Very strong. I'd never seen anything like it, especially on the vaccination issue. People from every partisan stripe or nonpartisan stripe, you could say, and from every walk of life all around the state were persistent and passionate and present almost every day.
Against the bill?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Was there wasn't a strong force for the bill, was there?
There is. There's a lot of, not in the same way. They worked more behind the scenes and with specific legislators to get things going, and they would make sure that things were set on the floor to support their arguments. But it wasn't the presence and passion that you saw from the people who were opposed to the bill. Was
that mostly people with a financial interest, like OHSU and the nurses? Can't remember what they're called, but
you could say financial interest. But they really do believe that making people do this is the best way to do it. And that's kind of a theme I was seeing this session, is that this is a good idea. Let's make people do it.
Yeah.
We need to control rents. Let's make sure they don't exceed this certain limit, but it's still, it's pushing people out of their homes because there's still a lot of rent hikes. We'd like people to not use plastic bags, what they call single-use plastic bags. So let's make sure that retailers can't have them. Did
that get pushed through?
It did today on the floor of the Senate.
No.
So it's passed.
You mean like all over Oregon?
It went over, yep.
So I would avoid shopping in McMinnville and go to Newburgh because I had my freedom. I always felt controlled every time I...
Yeah, it was, you feel extremely inconvenienced. I mean, people complain that the plastic bags are polluting, and they are lightweight, they float, they go through the air, they do end up in a lot of things. Isn't there a better way to tackle this? I mean, there's got to be a better way to tackle this than just outright ban, because the ban is actually going to cause more of the CO2 and all that stuff to go into the air, because they were using a byproduct to make these bags that now would be released into the air. So if they're wanting to curtail greenhouse gases, this is not the way to do it. I don't know. It's just it's kind of a mixed message coming from the proponents here. So.
And my guest next week has a PhD, and he has evidence that there is no man-made global warming. It's still up for debate. I would say it's clear there's no man-made global warming.
Well, I think it's clear that we have climate change. Yeah. To the extent that man is involved with it, that's up for question. And do we really want to, devastate an economy potentially in trade for what? What are you really getting for it? So is it worth the cost benefit there? And that's what we're trying to discuss in House Bill 2020. That's the cap and trade bill that I think can really, really create some damage here in the state, because it would create, the state would be able to get into contracts that we wouldn't be able to get out of, realistically speaking. It would be very difficult to unwind some of this policy.
Is that going to go through?
I don't know. I mean, it's like shifting sands. They've amended it. I think they were talking about the -A 111, like 111 amendment. There might even be more than that, but that's a high number as far as all the amendments. I feel sorry for legislative council having to draft all these, but they're long too. That bill, I think right now as it stands, is around 94 pages last I heard, but that might even be wrong.
How would that change our lives?
It's shifting sand right now. I can't even get into specifics, but I do know that they want to come up with a cap and trade scheme, which would put us into some, system that's in place. California's doing it. There's other places that do it. That you would you would allow a certain amount of CO2 emissions for industries, and then ratchet it down over time, and they would be able to use or buy credits, or I'm using the wrong terminology because I don't have that. It's not my committee, but they would be able to buy down some of their emissions, I guess, so that they could emit more than what they're allowed if they buy this. You know what? It's kind of confusing.
This is so dumb, considering it's it's somebody's agenda. But it's the fact they're doing this to people. I just think it's dumb.
Well,
now, you don't have to say that.
It essentially comes down to being a tax on energy.
Yeah.
And they want to make it more expensive for people to use that energy, so that they will change their habits. So it will be more expensive. Bottom line, if you make energy more expensive, everything becomes more expensive, because everything requires energy.
Well, and that's after they already raise the minimum wage. I'm a business owner, a small business owner.
Yeah,
business owners can barely survive. Since the economy is so good, I have noticed that there has been a lot of restaurants that have actually gone out of business. And I would have thought the opposite, but I'm assuming it's because of this increase in wages.
Well, there's a lot of things going on. We had the tax increase that just went through, was it last month? House Bill 3427. And so for businesses that gross, they're not making, but they're grossing $1 million or more, then they'll be paying this surtax on top of their income taxes.
Wow.
And so we are making it much more expensive all the time with all these little bills. We're chipping away at people's ability to be able to, make it in the state, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. Our business gross is more than $1 million, but we hardly see any of that.
Right.
Because it all goes out to everything else.
Uh-huh.
So it shouldn't count. But
well, they'll allow you to subtract 35%, I believe, of your business inputs or labor, one or the other. So 35% of that amount. And then you can take it down. Then you have to pay your 0.57% on the rest, and on top of your income taxes.
So that's going to kind of make us decide, should we grow more, or do we need to stay at this bracket? So we don't have to.
Decisions to be made, for sure. And it's going to affect every business differently.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, okay, what's next?
So, we had that. We had, let's see. Plastic bag ban. That was just a kind of fresh in my mind, because it just went through today. But because there was a really rosy revenue forecast, they're looking at, I think, over $1 billion in kicker back to people. And so I think they've decided that it averages out to be like $336 per taxpayer on what they would get on their kicker refund. But government being what it is, it sees that money and wants to go on a taxpayer-funded shopping spree for all kinds of projects. So they're looking to spend that kicker on things like a bridge and a zero-emission fund, a clean diesel engine fund, and some kicked back to taxpayers. Of course, the more you earn and the more taxes you pay, of course, on your earnings. So they want the people who are higher earners to get less of their kicker. So Not shocking there either.
Yeah. The harder you work, the
yeah,
less
they
you
want to
get.
put it in strategic investments like clean air, clean energy, this is what their terms, seismic safety, and job growth. I don't know what the job growth is there, but that's what they're claiming they're going to be putting it into. So they've got it spent. They've got it spent. They want it. They want to put their hands on it so bad. So that's still in play. Has not passed quite yet. There's, I had some bills passed though.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I mean, they're not earth-shattering or anything, but I think it'll help. One's Senate Bill 321 that helped people who were wrongfully convicted to be able to have access to the since improved technology on DNA testing, especially if they had, DNA was part of the evidence, entered for them. There are people who, I mean, it happens occasionally where mistakes are made and people are convicted wrongly for some serious crimes, and they might be serving a long time, and having them and giving them that ability to have some meaningful access to that testing and getting rid of that conviction.
Yeah. So I have talked with people who say they're innocent. I don't know. That's what they say. Maybe let's say 10 years ago, this technology wasn't available, or they didn't let them use it.
Well, what can happen sometimes, like for instance, there was this individual who testified in our committee who lived in Texas, and with our laws the way they are now, he would not have been able to get this piece of evidence that was they still had, fortunately, tested for the DNA. There was a bloody bandana. Okay, so in Texas, he was able to get this bloody bandana. There's a whole list of things that could be tested. The very last thing on the list was a bloody bandana that was found, a few hundred yards away from the crime scene. And it had the DNA of another person on it and the person who was the victim. So it had both. Oh. And this is what finally exonerated him. He'd served decades in jail. I mean, prison. He was serving prison for murdering his wife, and he didn't do it, and he was trying to prove his innocence and trying to figure out ways to do it, and finally was able to get this process going. But because of some little hitches in our law in Oregon, we were making people basically prove their innocence before they were able to try to prove their innocence. So that's what 321 was supposed to fix. Okay. So that one did pass. I was happy about that.
So next up, because I know that I'm going to hear about this a little bit. So when is that going to go into effect? So people who are serving time right now, how can they?
I believe that'll be January
of 2020.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think this one went in 90 days after, so it's probably just like most bills coming in.
What do they do? Get a court-appointed attorney at this point, and
well,
say there's
they can contact the Oregon Innocence Project, and they help get the process going for them. Yeah, there's a whole process and swearing. I mean, there's a big long process involved with it. So, and then there is Senate Bill 318. I had a bill that would make judges give equal parenting time when they're having to go through a court adjudicated, custody battle. I mean, most of them get figured out outside of court, but when it goes to court, it was one parent was the parent, and then the other one was consigned to being the visitor, and maybe given a few hours a month to be with the child. This way, you have both parents with the ability to ask for 50-50 parenting time or equal parenting time, and if it doesn't work out, so going back, they didn't want to make it so that the judges had to make that decision. So pared it back a little bit and said that this needs to be considered so that, and if it's not, if the judge does not give equal parenting time, then they have to explain why. So this kind of gives the parent who is consigned to be visitor the ability to change the situation and maybe improve circumstances so that they can become more involved in the child's life. And this is, of course, assuming that they're both capable, fit parents. We're not talking about abusers and all that stuff. But
Gives the parents both a little more rights than they had otherwise. They were at the,
right.
you know, okay.
Right. Because the way it is now, it's usually just, you know, one parent's, you get the child and you don't, and you get to visit. So they're trying to take into account both parents and allow the child to have both parents in their lives.
Yeah,
so.
Well, thank God. I've heard of terrible stories, and I don't know
I know.
why.
We had heartbreaking stories during testimony on it. Yeah, it's really sad. And now, being in the minority, you get through what you get through. And one of the bills I did get through was on daylight saving time. It wasn't my priority, but because I think when you see something that Donald Trump and Governor Kate Brown agree with, you know, it kind of catches the headlines and they move forward. But what it would do is that if California and Washington vote to move to daylight saving time, and then of course we still have to get congressional approval, that Oregon would as well. Notwithstanding Malheur County, which is in mountain time right now, it's important for them to stick with whatever is happening in Idaho. So, okay, so right now, Washington, their governor, Jay Inslee, signed a bill allowing, saying that Washington's ready to go to all year permanent daylight saving time if Congress will approve. California has, of course, their voters voted on it, and they're a little bit different than us. Once that happens, then they have to get 2/3 of both chambers to ratify it. So they've made it through their assembly, which is like our House, 70, I think it was 72 to nothing, 74 to nothing, something like that. But they have until September because they're kind of a full-time gig down there, unlike us where we are supposedly coming to a conclusion in June. So here we are. Our governor will be signing it on Thursday. And then we just have to petition Congress as well to allow states to make that decision. Right now, states can choose without talking to Congress to stay on standard time. That was allowed because when daylight saving time came into being, some states didn't want to go along with it, so they kind of all allowed the option for states to stay on standard time year round. So there are a couple states I know of, there might be more, but I think Hawaii and Arizona are two that just chose to stay on standard time. We could also choose to stay on standard time. I had a bill to do that in 2015, but most people said, no, I would miss the long summer nights and I don't want that to happen. So looking at it a little bit more closely, 8 months of the year already, 2/3 of the year, we're already on daylight saving time. So we're talking about 4 months of the year where we would just extend, and that would be the change. It would make later mornings as far as the sun coming up, but it would make for at least some light at one end of the day. You know, most people work during those, you know, the hours 8 to 5 hours, and so this would allow for a little more daylight in the afternoon. So
but it's probably easier than adjusting to all the...
people were concerned about their children going to school in the dark. Well, I would suggest that is happening now. And I mean, I'm sure they handle it in northern Canada and in Alaska where they have hardly any daylight at all. So I'm sure we can figure out how to deal with it here. So, those are the 3 bills that I actually were able to get through at this point.
Well,
but you know, worked on other things that didn't get any traction at all, like you know, extending and trying to protect Second Amendment rights and expand those rights and kind of unwind some of the things we've done in past sessions. Protecting rape victims, actually got some legislation through for that that I signed on to with other people, so that was good. Public employee unions, we went the other way. We're protecting them with 2016 and making sure that they can keep as many dues as they can. And then I think we need to do a lot to fix our state's foster care system. There's so much going on there that's, it saddens me, and there's just a lot that needs to be fixed. And I know the agency's working on that. I think we've got some really decent people in there.
The agencies and DHS.
DHS, I think there are some decent people that are in charge that are getting a lot of blame right now, but I think they're really trying to make things better.
Yeah.
And it just can't happen soon enough.
Yeah,
It needs to happen
even
a lot
if
quicker.
90% of the people there are fantastic and love children, that 10%, if there's no accountability, you know,
Well,
that's a really scary thing to put
It's
the
really
children
tough
through.
because I have I actually know somebody who's going through a DHS issue right now, and it's really it's difficult to see this. It's like you feel like you're whatever accusation's been flung at you from anybody from that agency, that it sticks to you. It sticks to you like glue, and you can't even fend it off.
Yeah.
You can't even defend yourself hardly. You have to either let it stick to you and then try to just work through their system so you can get your child back, or go through this court system that may or may not decide in your favor. It's just it's a really tough place to be.
Yeah. Well, and I've had really good experience with him myself. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but I've had friends and I've heard stories where you're guilty unless you can prove yourself innocent.
Right.
And then
That's
the
exactly what I'm talking
children are the ones that suffer, and many times the children wind up in homes where they are abused, where they're a commodity. I've talked to a lot of adult ex-foster kids, you know, that they're adults now, and they felt like they were a commodity, that they were there to make the person in charge of them money, and they were treated like that a lot of times.
Yeah, it's a very unfortunate, and the way our system is too, we don't do much to encourage the good foster parents and foster families to be involved. A lot of them just get also these things. I get more calls in my office about situations involving DHS than any other agency.
And that's the ones in charge of children, that wounded children that are hurting, and they should be the one institution that's the best. That's a stand above all the
There's
others.
a lot that needs to happen. I really do think they have some good people, but they really are overworked. I really think this is a situation where we need to put in more resources. I hate to say let's spend more money, but I think we got to get this one right, because these are kids.
Well,
it's going to
exactly. Yeah, it's just going to get worse and worse though. With the, you know, I wasn't for legalizing marijuana, you know, but it is a gateway drug, and I don't know how else you know. Everybody who does meth or whatever started with marijuana. So I don't know. I could see it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. It's not going to get better, you know, as far as the
bad situation.
The bad situation for the kids, and already they're putting kids in motels and things. I understand.
Yeah. I think they've finally gotten away from that, but they are really bursting at the seams. And we also take more children into custody. You know, what I'm saying by that is there are more children per capita in our foster care system than most states, and so something needs to change there. Maybe we shouldn't be taking as many kids. Maybe not every situation warrants removing a kid, but they're trying to be careful because they don't want to be in the headlines. So I think they're compensating the other way. I don't know. Yeah.
I knew a woman who, she didn't do drugs. She was actually a Christian, and she got tested positive when she went to DHS. And then she was given some advice: walk straight to an independent and take a drug test, and she was completely clean. But she had a run-in with the local police, and they're the ones that worked with DHS to get her kids taken away. So that's one case where there's it's very shady. And you've probably heard of many.
Oh gosh, yeah, like I said, they're the most common calls my office gets, and they're the most time consuming and definitely the most heartbreaking.
Yeah, the most heartbreaking, which
For
is
sure.
why you spend the time you do. Well, we're out of time. Is there any last words?
Well, it's not over quite yet, so hang in there. Hopefully people will let their legislators know where they stand on some of these bills that are still in play, and I know people are still living their life and maybe not paying attention, but boy, kind of need to.
Okay, cap and trade and
some of these tax bills going through.
Okay. Well, OLAS, I think.
Yep.
Go to OLAS.
Just Google OLAS Oregon; it'll come up.
Yeah, I always forget whether or not it's .com or .org, but
And
anyway.
when I say Google, I mean that as a, it doesn't have to be Google.
Yeah.
Just use whatever search engine you prefer.
Yeah. So this forced vaccination bill was going to be crammed down our throats, most likely until the grassroots stood up. And that was Republicans, Independents, non-affiliated Democrats. I mean, they all stood up and said, we want our freedom. And so that's what people can do. So pay attention to these bills and get involved. There's many ways to get involved. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good week. Bye-bye. Shiitake green tea, 2 incredibly healthy ingredients in 1 tasty cup. Check out many testimonials online for both shiitake and green tea, rich in antioxidants and other natural ingredients. Find more of our healthy mushroom teas at 11powerpolitics.com.